In January of 2021, a therapist in North Carolina sat across from a 16-year-old patient and heard something that made her pick up the phone and call the police. Her patient had been sending explicit photos of herself to a man she met on Snapchat. The man had been paying her for them cash, transferred directly to her account. When the investigators traced the usernames back to a real person, what they found wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It was a licensed orthodontist with 2 thriving practices in West Michigan. A man with a chair, a waiting room, and parents who trusted him with their children every single day. His name was Thomas Shannon. And by the time investigators were done pulling that thread, they had identified at least 18 victims, all of them children, across multiple states. And now we're going to go through the whole case, how it started, how it grew, how he got out on bond and kept going, and what finally put him away for 60 years. There are certain professions that come with a specific kind of trust, not just professional trust, the kind of trust that goes deeper, the kind where parents hand you their children and walked out of the room. Orthodontists live in that world. Kids sit in the chair, mom or dad waits in the lobby. The appointment is just routine. The relationship is built over the months, sometimes years, adjustments, check-ins, progress photos. It's just one of the most normalized relationships between an adult, a professional, and a minor that exists in American life. Thomas Shannon understood that world completely. He built a career inside of it. Shannon Orthodontics had 2 locations, one in Granville, Michigan, and one in Plainwell. He was in his 40s, established, respected. Parents in Kent County brought their teenagers to him and didn't think twice. I mean, who would? It's an orthodontist. But starting in 2019, according to federal court records, Shannon was living a second life entirely, one that had nothing to do with braces or retainers, one that played out on Snapchat, Ohm TV, and FaceTime, one that was paid through CashApp, and one that, by the time investigators unraveled it, had at least touched 18 children, some as young as 12. Across multiple states. This is how it came apart, and it starts with a therapist in North Carolina who did exactly what she was supposed to do. We're going to get to more of these unraveling details really quick. I just want to make you guys aware of our newly relaunched website, countertraffickingalliance.org or ctahelp.me, a much shorter URL. This is a resource directory for human trafficking survivors and victims. It has resources from 8 different categories across all 50 states in America. And so if you know of anybody that could use this website, it's definitely there. Open access 24/7 hotline feature that looks up your local hotlines, crisis hotlines, emergency shelters, a mix of many different resources. If something like this is important to you and you want to keep access going for human trafficking victims and survivors, consider giving at countertraffickingalliance.org. The link is in my description below. Every single little bit counts. Thank you guys so much. In January 2021, a therapist in North Carolina is meeting with a 16-year-old patient. And during that session, the girl discloses something. She's been communicating with a man on Snapchat. He's been asking her to send him explicit photos and videos. He's been paying her for all of it. The therapist does what a licensed professional are mandated to do. She reports it. Police talk to the girl. She gives them 2 usernames, one for Snapchat, one for CashApp. Those 2 pieces of information cross-referenced with account records lead investigators to a single name, Thomas Shannon, orthodontist, Granville, Michigan. So investigators obtained Shannon's Snapchat records, and what they find documented in those records is specific and damning. Thomas Shannon had told the girl he would pay, in his words, $5 per bikini pic, and that she could make as much as she wants. The conversation escalated. He agreed to pay more for explicit photos. He asked if she had anything from 8th or 9th grade. CashApp records confirmed that he paid her approximately $125 and $20 on the same day. Over time, CashApp records would show that he paid this one victim, just this one, more than $1,900 across 39 separate transactions. But investigators don't stop there. They pull Thomas Shannon's full Snapchat history. And that's where the scope of this begins to reveal itself, much more damning. Across his account, HSI agents find at least 16 additional child victims. One of them is 12 years old. To understand how Thomas Shannon operated for 5 years without detection, you have to understand the environment he chose. Snapchat was and remains one of the most widely used platforms amongst teenagers in the United States. Its defining feature when it launched, disappearing messages. It made it enormously popular with young users. It also made it attractive to people who wanted communications that didn't leave a permanent record. He used OMTV, a random video chat platform, to find and make initial contact with girls he didn't already know. He used FaceTime and text messaging to maintain those connections. And he used CashApp to pay for what he was asking for. The financial trail is one of the most significant elements of this case because it transforms what might otherwise look like isolated incidents into a documented transactional pattern. There are dates, there are amounts, there are 39 separate payments to a single victim. And that's not impulsive behavior, it's actually an ongoing operation. Court documents also reveal something else that tells you a great deal about Shannon's mindset. In his messages, he wasn't just soliciting content for himself, he was trying to build a network. He wrote to at least one victim, "Also, if you have any friends that would like to make money too, I will pay you $10 each if they work out." He was recruiting children, trying to use a child to find other children. One of his victims was a child in the foster care system. Thomas Shannon paid her nearly $2,000 across dozens of transactions for explicit content. Foster children represent one of the most vulnerable populations in this country. Kids without stable family structures, broken backgrounds, without consistent adult advocates, often in systems that are already stretched far too thin to catch what's happening to them online. Thomas Shannon found her and he paid her for months. January 2023, the Kent County Sheriff's Office has enough. Investigators go to Thomas Shannon's orthodontist practice in Granville to interview him directly. They ask him, "Do you remember messaging a minor on Snapchat in 2021? Thomas Shannon's answer, according to court documents, possibly yes. They ask him, "Did you ask for photos or images in exchange for money?" Thomas Shannon ends the interview. His final words before stopping: "If it happened, obviously it is all there and I have to fess up to it." He's arrested on state charges: 2 counts of possessing child sexually abusive material, 2 counts of using a computer to commit a crime. Thomas Shannon Orthodontics shuts down immediately. The chairs go empty. The parents start getting letters. And then Thomas Shannon posts a $20,000 bond and walks out of jail. What happens next is part of the story that the county prosecutor would later call out by name. Thomas Shannon, facing serious state charges and awaiting trial, decides to hire a private computer forensics expert. The plan, according to court documents, is to have that expert examine his own iPhone and iCloud accounts and produce evidence that would exonerate him. Prove that there was no illegal material. Prove the charges were wrong. The examiner does the work. And what he finds isn't exculpatory evidence. He finds a large amount of child sexual abuse material, CSAM in other words. He turns it over to police. The private expert Shannon hired to clear his name handed investigators the evidence that would destroy him. And if that weren't enough, while all of that is unfolding, while Thomas Shannon was out on bond awaiting trial and had been scheduled for November 2025, he was still online. In 2024, Thomas Shannon made contact with a 13-year-old girl in Maryland through OMTV, a different platform from Snapchat. According to court documents, the girl's father discovered the contact. He found explicit photos and videos of his daughter on her device, along with sexual messages from a contact she had saved under the name Daddy Dom, Chris from OMTV. Thomas Shannon was conducting this from his personal yacht, moored in Ottawa County, Michigan.
Former West Michigan orthodontist Thomas Shannon in federal court for sentencing. Cameras weren't allowed in, but I sat in and watched as the 44-year-old read this lengthy letter apologizing for the harm he caused his victims and their families. Calling himself arrogant and entitled, saying he rarely thought about how his actions affected other people. Questioning, quote, "How did I not see how destructive my online behavior was?" Even admitting his behavior would have never stopped if not for a federal search of his boat in Grand Haven. That search in 2024 when he was out on bond awaiting a trial for state pornography charges that came about in 2023 when a slew of photos of young children and infants were found on his phone. Court records show while out on bond, Shannon had been chatting with a 13-year-old girl from Maryland online. Investigators with Homeland Security finding that the former orthodontist had been producing and selling child porn on an online network. Court records show he exploited nearly 20 young children between 2019 and 2024, with some as young as 12 years old. The judge giving him the maximum 60-year sentence, calling his need to exercise power over young people horrendous.
Kent County prosecutor Chris Becker said it plainly to reporters. It is not a good idea to have people out on bond all the time because they're dangerous and they can still do bad things, as apparently Thomas Shannon did. August 2025, Thomas Shannon was arrested again, this time on federal charges in Frankfort, Michigan. When HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, takes over, the scope of what they're dealing with becomes fully visible. At least 18 confirmed child victims, ages 12 to 17 across multiple states. The operation ran from 2019 to 2024, 5 years, and the platforms used were Snapchat, OMTV, FaceTime, text, created a layered record that investigators were able to reconstruct in detail. Thomas Shannon is charged federally with attempted receipt of illegal child content, receipt of illegal child content, possession of illegal child content, attempted exploitation of a minor, and exploitation of a minor. In October 2025, Thomas Shannon pleads guilty to 2 counts, exploitation of a minor and attempted exploitation of a minor. As part of the plea, the other charges are dropped. He gives up his phone. He gives up his yacht. His attorney, in a sentencing memo submitted to the court, writes that the defendant had no prior criminal history and that his conduct was completely different from the many good things he had accomplished in his life. The prosecution's response is direct. They call Thomas Shannon a serial sexual predator. They ask for the maximum sentence allowed under the law. 2 30-year terms served back to back, totaling 60 years. In February 23, 2026, U.S. District Court, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Judge Paul L. Maloney looks at Thomas Shannon and delivers his sentence. 60 years, the maximum allowed by law. 2 30-year terms served consecutively. Thomas Shannon is 44 years old. He will not be a free man. Judge Maloney makes a statement that reporters in the courtroom will quote in every story they file. He says, "This is the most horrendous case I have seen in my 30 years working in state and federal courts." 30 years on the bench, thousands of cases, and this one, an orthodontist with a Snapchat account, a CashApp balance, and a yacht, was the worst. Attorney Timothy Verhey speaks after the sentencing. He says Shannon's exploitation of these children has exposed them to a lifetime of emotional damage. He adds, "Preying on our children must stop, and we will seek long sentences against people like Thomas Shannon until it does." Thomas Shannon is also ordered to pay $20,547 in restitution to the victims. He had already paid $2,000, $10,000, and even $7,900 to 3 of them as part of the plea agreement. Some of the same children he paid before to produce content for him now being compensated in federal court for what he did. He'll be under 10 years of supervised release if he ever leaves prison. He'll register as a sex offender for life. His phone and his yacht are completely gone. Shannon Orthodontics, the 2 practices that he built, the chairs, the waiting rooms, the framed diplomas, closed in 2023, the day after his arrest. Thomas Shannon isn't an anomaly. He's a data point in a documented pattern that child safety researchers and law enforcement have been tracking for years. The internet didn't create predatory behavior, but it industrialized access. Platforms like Snapchat, OMTV, and dozens of others have given bad actors direct, largely anonymous pathways to minors in their bedrooms, on their phones, at any hour. And the tools that made those patterns appealing to teenagers, disappearing messages, pseudonymous usernames, frictionless payment apps, are the same tools that made Thomas Shannon's operation harder to detect and easier to sustain. The Cash App element of this case is worth sitting with. Thomas Shannon didn't just want content, he wanted a pipeline. He paid consistently across dozens of transactions over months and years. He tried to get his victims to recruit their friends. He offered referral bonuses, essentially $10 per contact if they work out. This is the language of someone who has built a system, not someone who's making impulsive decisions. He did it while running a legitimate business, all while parents were sat out in the waiting room outside and checking their phones like we do normally. We just think that this is a normal visit. The foster care victim in this case is one of the most important details to hold on to. Research consistently shows that the children in the foster care system are significantly more likely to be targeted by online predators. Not because of anything inherent to them, but because of the structural gaps in oversight and support that exists in the system. Thomas Shannon, founder, he paid her $2,000, and the system that was supposed to protect her didn't know it was even happening until investigators came from the outside. This is what makes cases like Thomas Shannon's so important to document. It's not enough to say a bad person did a bad thing. The question is, how did this operate for 5 years? flawlessly? What systems allowed it? What would have stopped it sooner? And what does accountability actually look like once it's been allowed to run this long? That's what I want you to walk away with understanding about this case. Thomas Shannon was not a stranger lurking on a corner. He was an orthodontist, a professional, licensed, credentialed, welcomed into the routine of family life in West Michigan for years. The trust that came with his profession wasn't incidental. It was the backdrop against which everything else happened. And it's part of why this ran for so long as it did without anyone in his professional life seeing it. The 16-year-old in North Carolina, the one whose therapist made the call, changed everything. Her therapist did what mandated reporters are legally required to do. And what that report set in motion eventually uncovered 18 child victims across multiple states. One phone call, one therapist, one girl who told someone. Then there's the bond system. Thomas Shannon was arrested in January of 2023. He was released in March 2023 for $20,000. He was out for 2.5 years, and during that time, according to federal court records, he found new victims. The prosecutor said it out loud. The judge said it was the worst case he'd seen in 30 years. The system that was supposed to be monitoring Thomas Shannon while he waited for trial allowed him to continue his predation. That's not just a story about a man. It's a story about what happens when the institutional response to documented harm is a $20,000 check and a promise to show up in court. And finally, Thomas Shannon's own investigator, the forensic examiner he paid to exonerate him, that detail sits at the center of this case because of what it says about Thomas Shannon's confidence. He genuinely believed that he could walk away from this. He hired an expert, expecting that expert to come back with a clean report. When that didn't happen, his own effort to clear his name produced the evidence that convicted him. It revealed something. Not just about what was on his phone, but about what he thought he could get away with. And he was wrong. 60 years is the answer to that. There are 18 confirmed child victims in this case, possibly more. The number in court documents go as high as 21. They range in the age from 12 to 17. Some are from Michigan, some are from North Carolina, one is from Maryland. One was in the foster care system. All of them were children. They were on Snapchat, they were on TV, they were in their bedrooms, and a man with a dental license and a yacht and a CashApp account found them. Thomas Shannon will spend the next 60 years in federal prison. He'll be released, if ever, as an old man who will register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. His practices are closed. His yacht is gone. His phone is in the evidence room. Judge Maloney called it the worst case he's seen in 30 years on the bench. So guys, what did you think about this particular case? Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is disturbing because, what parent stops to think every single time they go to the dentist or to the orthodontist or for any trusted professional for that matter, that they have to think twice about stuff like this. But here, lo and behold, we have an orthodontist that was living a double life, contacting girls and creating essentially a pyramid scheme, a recruiting scheme for other girls, and then exchanging all of this CSAM material in the darkest corners of the internet. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. This channel exists to document these cases the way they deserve to be documented, with names, timelines, systems, and accountability. If that's the kind of investigation you want to follow, then I would suggest you subscribe, because we're just getting started. For years, we watched survivors search for help and hit dead end after dead end. Disorganized resources, gatekeeping, no clear path forward. So we spent years doing the research and we built the solution ourselves. CounterTraffickingAlliance.org is a free resource directory for human trafficking victims and survivors. Hotlines, emergency shelter, counseling, referrals, all in one place. No gatekeeping, just help. And we need your support to keep it going. Donate at countertraffickingalliance.org. Link is in the description below. Share this, it could save a life.